Council for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022 to order. Thank you all for being there, here, wherever that may be. Do we have any agenda additions or changes for tonight?
Not for me.
Okay, council members? All right, no need to approve the agenda. That will move us into item 4, which is public to be heard. And so this is the portion of tonight's meeting where if there are members from the public who wish to bring anything to the board's attention as not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. If there's anybody in the room who wishes to address the board, if you could please raise your hand so that someone could identify you.
Nobody in the room.
All right, for those of you on Zoom, if you could go ahead and raise your hand. All right, Will, go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mr. Council members. My name is Will Dodge. I sit on the Essex Energy Committee, which up until, I guess you should say still, at least until July of next year, is a committee that has been devoted to covering the energy needs of both the town and what is now the city. And by covering, what I mean is we're a volunteer committee that look at things like municipal energy usage, trying to help members of the community with things like weatherization, electric vehicle adoption, renewable energy development, and a whole host of related issues. Right now, we have almost a full committee, and that includes among the members at least one Essex Junction resident, as well as the one of the building manager for town of Essex, who's really, as part of his employment is focused on Essex town, but has at least in the past provided some advice and assistance to Essex Junction. We understand from what's happening with what I'll just call demerger, that most committees are not going to be replicated, that you will end up having town committees and city committees for different functions. I guess we would like to propose, and this is based on discussions that we've had, both internally and also with others, that we actually maintain being a committee that is serving both the city and the town. And the reason that I'm raising this way tonight is because we wanted to know what would be the best way for us to kind of present that as a more, I guess, formal option. I had thought of maybe something along the lines of a memorandum of understanding, so that if in the future there's some reason within city government to say, no, I think it makes sense to have our own committee, then maybe at that point we dissolve it. But that at least for the time being, and in particularly in light of all of the focus on funding that's coming in that could be helpful to a large number of transportation related, energy related, building related projects, we'd really like to continue our role with respect to the city for the time being.
Thank you, Will. And I do remember this topic coming up when we were talking with the select board around what to do when we get to this inevitable point. I think if you wanted to come back to us with a memorandum of understanding and or even just an outline as to how this would function, what the benefits would be, what the potential cons would be, those types of things that would be helpful for our future conversation. Some of the things that, if I remember correctly at that point in time, that came up as reasons for separating were largely around things like funding and how to ensure that there's equitable funding for both portions of the community, board membership, those type of dynamics. Those are all things that we would need to take into consideration.
Very good. Well, I appreciate it. I know you have a busy agenda, so I just thought that I would raise this now. We actually have a meeting tonight, so we'll talk about this more and see if we can put together some type of formal proposal.
Sounds great. Sounds like the timing was perfect.
All right. Great.
Great. Take care, Will.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. You as well. All right. I am not seeing any other hands up on Zoom. So then we can go off of public to be heard and move right into the public hearing on the proposed municipal ordinance updates to remove redundancies.
Yeah. So what you've got in your packet talks about the municipal ordinances. We talked about this at the last meeting when you set the public hearing warning. This is essentially rescinding a number of components in the existing municipal ordinances that are now redundant based on the new public nuisance ordinance that was passed. So you've got this section on your agenda for public hearing, and then we've got the documents itself down on the business item for action if you're ready to do that.
Thank you, Regina. And so just as this is a public hearing, if there are members from the public who have any questions, please feel free. Those of you in person, if you have questions on this, please go ahead, raise your hand.
Nobody in the room.
All right. Those of you on Zoom, if you have any questions on this, please go ahead, raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Scrolling through the participant list, still no hands. So with there being no hands, then we could go ahead and close the public hearing on this item. And we will now jump into 6A, Resolution of Appreciation for Bernie Fleury and Jerry Firkey.
Yeah, so you've got two resolutions for you in your packet. Apologies for Bernie's resolution. There were some typos in there, so you folks have that corrected version in your email today. Andrew, so you know neither of those folks are here in the room with us.
Thank you for that, Regina. Appreciate that. If one of the members of the board who might not be under the weather would like to read the Bernie resolution, that would be appreciated.
I'd be happy to. Okay. This is a resolution of appreciation for Bernie Fleury. Whereas Bernie Fleury was hired by the city of Essex Junction as wastewater operator on March 12th, 1979. Wow. Whereas, since that time, Bernie's in-depth knowledge and experience has led him to hold roles as assistant chief and chief operator for over 30 years, training, mentoring, and guiding new and seasoned operators. Whereas, Bernie will retire on December 16th, 2022, as the longest continuous serving employee with 44 years of dedicated service, leadership, knowledge, and experience at the wastewater treatment facility. Whereas Bernie has witnessed, participated, and given input in every upgrade that has occurred at the facility and remote pumping stations, including the addition of secondary treatment and sludge management, parentheses 1983, the gravity belt thickener, and equalization building addition, 2011 maintenance upgrade, upgrades to West Street, Susie Wilson Road, and the high school pump stations. Whereas Bernie has assisted with several innovative and cutting-edge pilot programs at the facility, including a phosphorus reduction and recovering process in partnership with UVM and Vermont Phosphorus Innovation Challenge, and a protein matrix grease reduction management program in anaerobic digesters. Whereas Bernie was an active member of several trade organizations, including the New England Water Environment Association and Green Mountain Water and Environment Association. He was a member of the operations team called Sewer Marines, representing Vermont and New England at regional and national wastewater operation challenge competitions, placing in several categories. Whereas Bernie received the Wastewater Operator Excellence Award from Green Mountain Water Environment Association for outstanding service in water pollution control in 2020. Whereas Bernie's sense of humor, teamwork, leadership, passion for doing a job thoroughly, teaching others, and historical knowledge of the facility will be tremendously missed. Now therefore be it resolved, on this day, Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, the Essex Junction City Council expresses its appreciation to Bernie for his dedicated career at the Essex Junction wastewater facility. We thank you for your time and your service to our community. And I simply, he's just one of these, he's an institution, and I don't know how we're going to replace him, but we're going to try. But he is certainly an irreplaceable person, and I think we're all extremely appreciative of what he's done. One of the unsung heroes of this community. But hopefully he'll get a little bit more notoriety now.
Absolutely. Thank you, George. Very well said. And certainly his impact will be felt or has been felt for years and will continue to be felt for many years beyond that, given the amount of training and impact he's had in our community, and the staff here greatly appreciate all of Bernie's work. Are there any more comments from the council members? Hearing none, I would entertain the motion to approve the resolution for Bernie.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, George. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Great. So that passed unanimously. Thank you all. And George, if you don't mind again going into the resolution for Jerry, would be appreciated.
This is a resolution for appreciation for Jerry Firkey. Whereas Jerry Firkey has been the Essex Town and Essex Junction Health Officer for 47 years. Again, wow. Whereas Jerry's term will end on December 31st, 2022, ending his 50-year service as a Vermont health officer. Whereas Jerry has worked in difficult and stressful situations with empathy for the parties involved. Whereas Jerry has assisted the city with rental housing complaints, rodent issues, and countless public health issues. Whereas Jerry's dedication to the health and safety of this community has been invaluable and will be missed. Now, therefore, be it resolved on this day, Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, the Essex Junction City Council expresses its appreciation to Jerry for his dedicated service as a health officer. We thank you for your time and service to our community. And let me add, Jerry, you have earned a well-deserved rest. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And 47 years for something that, again, as an unsung hero and for a role that is greatly underappreciated broadly in the state. Really appreciate that dedication to our community.
Can I just clarify?
Please.
I put both 50 years and 47 years in there because he's been a health officer for 50. Just happens to be 3 years in Jericho, but I wanted to make sure that it's clear.
Wow. It's quite impressive.
It is. It's very impressive. Stay with it that long. Remarkable.
If there are no other comments, and I would entertain the motion to approve the resolution of appreciation for Jerry Firkey.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, George and Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Great. So again, that passed unanimously. Thank you all. Bernie, Jerry, thank you both very, very much. Your tenure has been certainly well noted and appreciated, and you will definitely be missed. So thank you. And that will bring us into the discussion and consideration of the Chittenden Solid Waste District applicants. Why don't we first have John O'Brien? I assume John may be in the room this evening. And if so, John, if you don't mind going up to the microphone and starting off. Oh,
Sorry, Andrew, he's on.
nope. Oh, there he is. John, if you're here with us on Zoom, you could go ahead and, oh yes, I understand bath time well. So then why don't we start with Mike Sullivan? Mike, I think you're on Zoom.
I am on Zoom.
Great. Hello, Mike.
Hey,
If
Joe.
nice to see you again.
Likewise.
If you don't mind, just starting off with why you're interested and what you hope to you would be able to do with being on the board for Chittenden Solid Waste District.
Well, I've been looking for something to do to contribute to the city. I'm very attuned to the difficulties that we have with waste. I'm very personally, I'm very cognizant of what I throw and how I throw away stuff and where I put it and separating all the metals and such. Very excited about that new sorting machine that CSWD is bringing in. And I've learned a lot over the years living in Vermont. From the time growing up in the city, it was like, well, you just put it out on the sidewalk. Well, that doesn't quite work so much for here. I don't have any particular background as to experience. I'm an engineer from employment, and have a fairly good number or fairly good head for numbers and for mechanical problems. And also I think I'm fairly good at being a compromising person, or that sounds odd. Being a person who's willing to listen to both sides before without making and willing to listen to someone else's solution. So other than that, not much else I can put out there, I think, unless there's a specific question.
One question for me: if you are not selected tonight, or if you were not selected to be on the Chittenden Solid Waste District board, would there be other committees that you might be interested in?
I would consider such, yeah. Energy, perhaps.
Okay.
Now that but you've got to solve that problem with the town first, right? Or for the other, anyway. Yes.
Council members, other questions?
I don't have any. I'll just observe for both the candidates. I've been a substitute for that board for many times, and it's actually it's a great board. It's very lively. Every single community in Chittenden County is represented on it, and they actually do some really good stuff. So it's a fun board to be on. And they do have an impact.
Cool. That's what I heard. That's really wanted. I hear it's party. Yeah, no. Thanks, George.
And along that line, I assume then you would be able to attend their meetings that would work within your schedule to be there and fully represent the city of Essex Junction if you were appointed?
Oh, yes. That should not be a problem at all. When you're retired, you have a little more time to do things. Maybe a lot more time to do things.
Great. Well, do you have any questions for us?
You also appoint an alternate too, right?
Yes.
Is there one already?
Currently, Amber is our alternate. Interestingly, Amber, please chime in. My understanding is their meetings are the same time as our meetings.
I might have gotten that wrong.
Oh,
I do believe they're Wednesdays, but they might be, I might have gotten the weeks mixed up. I don't usually attend them, as is pretty obvious from the fact that I don't even know when they meet half the time. But they, I do know they are Wednesday meetings.
Yeah, that's none of that's a problem.
great. Any other questions for us, Mike?
Will there be instructions from you guys as to your positions on things that will come before the board, I guess?
Generally, there are not. In the past, there have not been. If there are questions that you have that you're or if there are things that come to you that you're unsure how to answer, certainly happy to have those conversations. In all honesty, we likely would look to you unless there are significant things coming down the line, like this new MRF. That would certainly be one of those things that we would like to have a conversation about to make sure that in this instance you would be in support of.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I wasn't even sure I was supposed to be at this meeting, as much as I didn't get any information. I just happened to look at the agenda tonight, and I says, oh, maybe I should log on.
Well, it is not required that you be here for an interview. It's not required that you say anything. it's an opportunity that we put forward.
But apologies from staff all the same. You should have been invited. So apologies for that.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, and so, Mike, if there are no other questions, we appreciate you applying and putting your name out there and your time tonight. And John, I'll just one last call. If you do have the time to talk right now, though you did say that it was bath time, can completely understand if not.
I've managed to pull away briefly.
Oh.
Yes, I've been listening along and have a similar drive as Mike to contribute to the community. My family and I just actually moved to Essex after residing around different communities in Chittenden County and growing up in Vermont. And we're also looking for ways to just kind of get involved. The future garbage and waste management, recycling, they're all very important to me and my family, something we take a lot of time to think about our usage and impact, especially because I have 2 young kids at home who are certainly holding us to that. So seeing all of the new and exciting changes to Chittenden solid waste from the new facility and just kind of seeing our state as a leader in a lot of sustainable practices, I just kind of want to be a part of that and contribute voice to our city's drive there.
Thank you, John. A similar question to you: of if you were not selected, are there other committees that you would be open to considering?
Absolutely, yeah. Considering the many ways that the city is finding itself now, yeah, I would certainly be open to that.
Great. Are there any topics of interest to you? Anything in particular that sticks out, or just a general openness?
General openness, pretty open availability. I'm lucky enough to be stay at home with the 2 kids right now, so I do have some availability.
Great. Counselors, any particular questions?
I don't have any.
Okay, I assume that again, you would have the availability to attend their meetings once a month, the ability to read their packets, and to attend those meetings and make decisions on our behalf.
That is correct, yes.
Great. And do you have any specific questions for us?
Not at this time, no. Thanks for the consideration.
Great. Well, John, appreciate your time, and we will be sure to let you know. So as for the council members and Regina, something that I missed when we were going over this agenda is typically we would have these conversations in executive session about the 2 candidates. And unless I'm missing something, I'm not noticing an executive session for this conversation.
Correct.
So, board, our next meeting would be we're not having a second meeting in December, correct? We were going to wait until January.
Right.
If we don't appoint somebody tonight and we wait until that January 11th meeting, I assume that means there's 1 meeting that CSWD would go without having a representative at the most.
The term doesn't carry through the fiscal year?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I thought we had discussed just keeping the status quo until the end, as we do with the other committees.
I for one would be fine waiting until January. If others are okay waiting another month so that we can have the conversation in executive session and then make a decision at that time.
Yeah, and so this situation is where Alan Nye from the town has been the rep for both the town and the city. So we were wanting to get a city representative, but I think your good assumption that January is a fine approach.
Great, then let's table the rest of this conversation until January. Mike, John, thank you both. We will be back in touch around mid-January.
Very good. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you as well. And that would bring us into a presentation on the Housing Trust Fund proposal from the Housing Commission. And I believe we have Katie Ballard, chair of the commission, with us virtually.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, Katie, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Excellent. And Regina is going to share the presentation. So, oops,
Ready. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, does that look right?
yes,
Excellent.
you can go ahead to the first slide. Thank you. So, when the Housing Commission was created in 2020, one of the main topics we were given to consider was the potential for developing an Essex Housing Trust Fund. So tonight I'm here to provide some initial information about what this could look like and how we could consider funding one. But this is purely informational and just meant to give kind of an update on our progress and hopefully allow us to get some feedback from the city council on direction, on kind of any sort of questions that we can answer as we continue. A housing trust fund is typically a dedicated source of funding or subsidies dedicated by a local or state government body for affordable housing projects and many other potential activities, as we'll discuss later. In addition to providing funding for approved projects, it would potentially provide a source of local match funds to leverage larger funding sources. If our community were to establish inclusionary zoning or set up a payment in lieu option for density bonuses, such payments could potentially be directed to a housing trust fund as well. While not meant for large endowment funding sources, many local communities do receive a number of private donations to increase the availability of funding. Oftentimes, there's people who will bring private donations that are almost connected to some of what those private donors and organizations might do in grants or other funding awards. The advantage of a housing trust fund is that it creates a flexible funding avenue that allows for creative and innovative resources to address a number of varied purposes related to the housing needs of our community specifically. They are proven to be effective across the country. 47 states currently have a housing trust fund, as well as more than 750 cities and counties. By researching various models, we can create a structure that fits the needs of our local community and allows for the appropriate municipal control of how resources are allocated. Next slide, please. Sorry, excuse me. Access to stable and safe housing is one of the central needs for every member of our community and plays a pivotal role in the quality of life people may have. And this has only gotten worse since the pandemic started. When you're forced to spend significant portions of your income on your housing alone, it can cause issues with finding childcare, employment, accessing healthcare and education, as well as limit someone's ability to participate and engage in civic discussions. Vermont Housing Financial VHFA estimates that up to 2/3 of households in Essex and up to 3/4 of those in Essex Junction who qualify for rent assistance are not receiving it. This is largely due to limited amount of funding available. Not only are limited funding resources a barrier, but accessing those programs and resources can be challenging for those seeking help. There are lengthy applications and steps in the process, in addition to many requirements for eligibility that can not only be overwhelming, but difficult on those attempting to access the support and resources necessary for dignified housing. One barrier we don't often realize is the stigma that comes from accessing these resources and having to continue to seek the support. Housing costs for both renters and homeowners have skyrocketed, and in our community, the demand has far outpaced the supply. Our current existing availability of housing is very far from meeting the needs of the community at large. Next slide, please. Specifically in Essex Junction or Essex, a housing trust fund would potentially increase the housing stock available in our community by addressing or supporting the the changes or work that would be needed to use some of the most underutilized housing stock. That could look like creating accessory dwelling units. It could look like renovating spaces, or potentially bringing buildings up to code if they wanted to rent to somebody that might be on Section 8. A local housing trust fund would also have less limitations on the funding and who it can receive it. Most federal funding comes with a number of requirements and restrictions. In a housing trust fund locally, the city council would be able to dictate and set the parameters and the requirements, which often are more flexible and able to serve more of the community than the restrictions in place for federal funding. This would also potentially allow the municipality to leverage other funding avenues. As we mentioned before, the private funding, some grant funding requires that there be a housing trust fund or an agency in our community specifically dedicated to the funding and providing the staffing or the support needed to make sure that all of the paperwork was done as required, and that there was also somebody checking the different steps, more so than in some of the bigger federal funding programs. Next step, or next slide. So the next two slides really include a list of various different options. And this isn't an all-inclusive list, but we really wanted to try and give a variety of options that you could think about as you're considering this proposal in the future. And there's no order to this. It would potentially create a lower barrier funding for homelessness prevention. So that's really talking about people who are at risk of losing their housing due to inability to pay, due to any sort of utility, kind of any of those pieces that might not have other options to access. Subsidies or grants to make existing units ADA compliant for more potential populations to be served by the current housing that we have. Grants for alterations to existing homes to create new housing units. And that would potentially include accessory dweller units. Subsidies for weatherization upgrades, subsidies for affordable units within otherwise market rate development projects. Next slide. Potentially could be used for down payment assistance for first-time homeowners. That is something that we looked a lot at Champlain Housing Trust model, including the shared equity program, to kind of figure out some of the different ways that could potentially be leveraged. Supportive housing for those experiencing homelessness, domestic abuse victims, substance abuse recovery. It could go towards providing access or the necessary changes to make potential programs like that available in our community. To purchase and do the preparations of lands for future affordable housing projects. For municipally funded construction of housing or infrastructure upgrades, and other housing quality enhancements like landscaping, or some places are more recently beginning to look at helping provide access to homeowners for alternative methods of electricity. So helping provide access to some of those more energy efficient options like solar panels could be potentially. Now, all of these are definitely options. None of them are necessarily a requirement of having a housing trust fund. It can look any number of ways, and that would really be dictated by the group, your group, as you consider kind of what priorities our community is facing and what does seem appropriate. The one piece of this that we have started to realize in talking to other groups or other people who are involved in creating housing trust funds for their communities was that it is sometimes too complicated, I guess would be the right word, for groups to choose all of the options, because that would require a lot more capacity to be able to ensure all of the requirements and eligibility pieces and the follow-up afterward are in place and met. Next slide, please. So this slide is inclusive of a number of different possible funding mechanisms. As I said before, there's several possibilities, not all of which involve property taxes, although that is a common source since it's directly tied to the value of housing in the community. This could be included as a line item transfer in the operating budget or as a separate dedicated rate similar to the capital fund in the budget. Based on the FYE 2022 budget, a new tax of 1 cent on the dollar of assessed value would have generated about $974,000 and would have increased the average taxpayer's bill by about $23. Now, some of these are pre-separation figures, so full disclosure, we have not necessarily reworked those numbers since post knowing all of that. So an increase of the tax rate is not the same as an increase in the overall budget, which might include other revenue sources other than property taxes. Some of those other options include part or all of a local options tax on sales, meals, alcohol, hotels. Some places are also doing taxes on short-term rentals, and that tax goes into the housing trust fund to support local housing. These type of options are estimated to generate up to $1.2 million. Payment in lieu under inclusionary zoning for developers choosing not to construct their own affordable units, if this was implemented, could increase a substantial amount, but we haven't had a chance to look at comparable numbers. Charitable donations with the potential for groups like the Housing Commission or other organizations that might be interested to be able to also fundraise and have a set budget or line item for that. Fees for documents recorded with the town clerk or a local property transfer if allowed by statute. Next slide. So the next part would be to kind of talk about process and timeline. The first step, which we have been focusing on for a while now, which this has definitely been one of our priorities. I think as we've also kind of had to, at some points, kind of focus on separation and those conversations and membership. We would have liked to have done this sooner, but we hope the next steps in the process would be quicker. This research step really included exploring the different types of uses, structures, funding, and also oversight by looking at other housing trust funds. We also interviewed and connected with people who were either overseeing or were a part of the process to create a housing trust fund. One person was Polly Nichols in Montpelier, who is a wealth of information and has offered to continue kind of engaging as we move forward if there are questions that would be helpful to have somebody with experience in this answer. Our next step is really to take all of that information, and we have begun a set of recommendations for creating a housing trust fund, both here and also in Essex town. And at the time, we're trying to really get clear on what information would be the most helpful to the city council in considering a proposal like this. Would it be information related to different funding options, oversight, more clarity on the different options that we could utilize the funding for and what that would look like in terms of impact to our community? Those are all places that we've begun to really focus on, but would love any feedback on. The idea would be to, once we have more information and a little bit more clarity on a scope, we would want to bring this forward to the community through stakeholder interviews and other outreach opportunities that we would like to have, and be able to hear directly from the community in terms of the barriers or specific needs we are facing here in Essex Junction, or the city of Essex, or really in terms of what would be helpful to fund? Is there a need for first-time home owner support, or is there more a need for looking at providing funding to improve the current housing stock? Would be really helpful to hear. We've also actively been engaging with nonprofit agencies like Champlain Housing Trust, as well as finding opportunities to hear from other developers and landowners. We're hoping to create several avenues to get community engagement and input as we move forward creating this proposal. Next slide, please. I will not read this entire list as I think I've done enough talking, but these are some potential questions that we came up with, that just to give an idea of some different questions, and if there is any information that we can look into or spend more time researching, we would be happy to bring back any answers or information as we continue to get it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this kind of beginning stage of the Housing Trust Fund. And I also just want to take a moment to say how excited this opportunity or potential discussion has been for me personally, as somebody who has experienced homelessness in our community and struggled with accessing resources for a number of reasons. To know that this is something that was a priority or a question from the beginning from our officials really means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and please pass a thanks on to the rest of the Housing Commission members. It's greatly appreciated that you all have done this work. In terms of just trying to answer some of your questions, I'll go ahead and start, and then we can just go around to everybody else to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. Absolutely in support of a local housing trust fund. Some things that would be helpful to know are just some examples as to what some other communities are doing and how they have used their money, and specifically what type of impact that had on the community. So whether that's going towards funding and whether that's going towards leveraging funds of other units, such as how many units did that help to fund, if it's ADA rehabs, what types of rehabilitations and how many rehabilitations that went to go towards. Those types of things would be helpful to know, which would then help to figure out how much funding we would be looking to provide for this, or seeking to provide for a housing trust fund. It would also be helpful to know when the intent and purpose of the trust fund needs to be determined, if that's something that can only be determined at one point in time when the fund is created, or if that's something that every time funding is dispersed, it can be determined ad hoc at that time, or anything in between. That would be helpful as well. And then in terms of public engagement, I'm happy to help with it. Personally, I don't want to get in the way. And in general, I would say that my personal opinion, I don't feel you need to come to the city council to have your survey or public engagement plan approved of. But those are my thoughts. Who wants to go next?
Would it be possible? I just one of the questions that you had asked was the second question you asked was about. Can you remind me? Sorry.
Might have been examples and how far those funds have gone.
And I think I'm sorry, the question I wanted to just respond really briefly to was the one about kind of the timing for needing to determine kind of the purpose and mission. And what I would say is what we've researched and what we found in terms of kind of best practices or common practices is really that there is a clear kind of list of potential options, and then through the process of approval, there's more flexibility in the specific requirements. But again, that is something that we could provide some of those specific examples of some of what that looks like and what that potential scope is from some of the local housing trust funds across Vermont too, if that would be helpful.
That would be very helpful. Thank you, Katie. I think I saw Raj's hand first.
Thank you, Katie, for this. This is great. I do support it. I feel like we have a lot to consider around housing funding and other things coming up. I think it'd be helpful. I mean, one question I have, I guess, is with the funding for this, and you don't have to know this right now, but I'm wondering if it's an initial infusion of money to get the fund started, and then some of the mechanisms that you gave as examples, operate as revenue streams for that fund, or is this something we're budgeting for annually, or is it a mix?
I can answer that for you right now. It's a mix.
Sure.
So it's really,
Okay.
oftentimes there is an initial kind of infusion, and then those other mechanisms come into play, but then a smaller annual amount might be considered in addition.
Okay. And I guess, the other, sorry, I'm getting a cat alert that's interrupting my meeting. Excuse me. There's been an incident on campus. What was my other question? I guess I'd want to know more from your listening sessions, your engagement, what the specific needs are. But I think this is worthwhile. I'm curious in our community with it as built out as it is, how this would work. So I'm probably spend a little bit of time thinking about what this would look like for the city, where it appears that a lot of new housing opportunity is going to be apartments. So I'm wondering if it's more renovation and the ADA side, or the ADUs and that sort of thing, or maybe grants to put an extra room on for an aging parent or something like that. So anyway, great presentation. A lot of questions. I'm looking forward to hearing more about what the commission comes up with from engagement, and please don't be shy in letting us know, or Regina know how it's going, what you might need, and all of that.
Thank you very much. And I have that list of questions. And as we're continuing to work, I'll make sure that we update as appropriate through Regina, or even an email from myself to you all with just a periodic update. Our hope is that this will continue. And I know myself and Gabrielle, my vice chair on the Housing Commission, who are both city appointees, are very involved and have been involved in this since the beginning. So we are very much looking at this from a city and a town perspective in terms of the options, because we do recognize the difference between the lay of the land, for lack of better terms, between the two.
Great.
All right, Amber, go ahead.
Thanks, Katie. This was a really good presentation, lots of information. Andrew, I think, covered most of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to make sure that I personally don't know a lot about housing trust funds, and I'm really curious to see exactly what the other communities in the state of Vermont specifically are doing. So I almost envision this like spreadsheet that has like the communities on it and what their funding sources are and what they allow to be used for those funding sources. And maybe this already exists. Maybe there's some PDF out there that I don't know about, but that's kind of where my mind was going, to be specific more about what the folks here in Vermont are doing with a housing trust fund.
That's a great idea in terms of the spreadsheet. I love it. I don't believe there's one after all of the conversations. I think we would have found it by now, but it seems like something that would be beneficial to more than just our community. So I definitely will bring that to the commission, and we will get working on kind of that type of information, but also the data that really provides the impact to the community.
Thanks, Katie.
George or Dan?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on this. Thanks for the presentation. Excellent presentation. This regarding housing and the availability of housing in our community, affordable housing or otherwise. It's a holistic approach I think we have to take at this. Just the funding alone is not going to be enough. My opinion is, as Raj brought up, we're a built out community. We're a small community. We're a very small city. We're going to have to look at zoning and land development code and look at changing that. I mean, we got to look at the potential of going higher. We can't really build out much more. So either you build up or you build out. So if we can't build out, we're going to have to look at building up. So that's something that we may want to be looking at.
I can just briefly say that we have been looking at the zoning piece of it in terms of beginning to think about and understand the aspects of it related to the housing stock that we currently have, and how do we get creative and think about what our limits currently are in our zoning, and what can we think about for changes in the future. So I think we can definitely be of any support in that conversation in the future. Please feel free to reach out and let us know when and how that would be helpful.
George?
Katie, I'll finish up and say I agree with I think we're all of one mind on the city council. All the comments I've heard, and Andrew, Raj, Amber, Dan said all the things that I had in mind. I think, generally speaking, I think for the council it would be good if you actually came back to us with recommendations and priorities that you find in your survey. And particularly, again, and it sounds like you're going to do it, something that is specific to Essex Junction. What are the issues? What are the problems that we are facing in terms of priorities? One thing I would like to stress or suggest when you do outreach for senior citizens, people on fixed incomes aren't always as responsive and accessible for surveys as other people, and yet they are probably one of the most marginalized groups in Essex Junction, people who on fixed incomes who are struggling to stay in their homes. And so I would just like you to keep that in mind, that you may need to make some special effort and outreach for that population. I would like to see some engagement with them too. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just to share with you briefly, we have begun looking for the different ways that we can engage with that population, especially in terms of, is it better to, provide different locations and opportunities for face-to-face, connecting with agencies that serve and help those populations, as well as making sure that it is posted or shared in various methods that would be likely to be accessible to them. But if anybody had any suggestions of groups or people that we should engage with, or that might help us create that plan, I would love to have that and be more than happy to connect with them and get support, because this is a population that is not represented currently on our housing commission.
Thank you.
Regina, did you have any questions or thoughts?
I don't have any questions. Thanks so much, Katie.
Thank you all, and I look forward to continuing this conversation in the future.
Likewise. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. And again, please pass my appreciation on to the rest of the council, or the rest of the commission, please. All right. So next up, we have 6D, the discussion and consideration of Champlain Valley Expo's financial agreement.
Yeah, so we've got David here in the room, and I'm just realizing when I stopped sharing that we Our recording is paused, so thank goodness for Town Meeting TV, and I'm going to get that started.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So you've got a memo in your packet about this. I think it was the last meeting that you saw the conceptual plan for 1 Main Street Park, and the cost estimates are coming in.
We're on the CVE one.
I think we're on the CVE.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Almost.
That's okay, Regina.
Tim Shea is in the room.
Yes.
So for this agenda item, you've got a recommendation for extending the financial agreement between CVE and the city of Essex Junction. And Tim Shea is here if you want to add anything. And their board approved this on Monday night.
Great. I don't have any questions. This looks right. Are there any questions from the board? Raj, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just surprised to see it starting at 15 as opposed to having been increased already in previous years. I know we took a pause, but before that it was to go up. So I was surprised to see it starting back for 3 years ago or more at the base level at 15. My understanding is it would have had at least 1 or 2 increases. I know we did pause for 1 year for COVID. So not sure what folks think about that, but otherwise looks fun.
Thanks, Raj. Not going to ignore your question. Amber, do you want to ask your question as well? We'll just have a giant free for all at that point.
So I had a number of comments, but that was my first one as well. Generally speaking, if you're starting off, you're going to start where the old contract ended. So it would be 15,200 or whatever it happens to be, and then 2% increases each year thereafter. There were, I guess, one of my questions that I had was, we had traditionally been doing a 3-year contract, and this switches over to a 5-year, which I don't necessarily have an issue with, but I'm just curious why the change.
I think when I can't answer for the exact year as to why longer. Regina, I think it may have been, please correct me if I'm wrong, trying to align the time of this and the sound agreement.
Yeah, the last time that we talked about this, there are the other agreements are off schedule. So if we get this one to go to the 5 years, next year when we update those agreements, we would get them all aligned at the same time. So we wouldn't, at that point, we wouldn't necessarily need to do it for a 5-year time period. You could potentially do them all for a shorter time period, but this would at least get them kind of lined up collectively together.
Okay, so because the sound agreement expires at the end of next year, so they would just be, at that point, they're on the same time frame.
Yep.
Okay. So a couple of other just like little nitpicky kind of things in the agreement itself, because it's shifting over to a 5-year agreement. The language in section 1 is incorrect because it says there's 2 additional subsequent donations, which would actually be more than that because of the time frame again. And also should be last payment being June 15th, 2027, because the agreement doesn't go beyond 2027. I think we had some discussion, though, correct me if I'm wrong, about removing the donation use section and allowing us to be able to determine ourselves what we wanted to use this money on. And then my last comment, and I'm just going to throw these out here, Andrew, you can comment after. there is a reference to in section 9, the notice section that had unified manager, just a legacy left over. That's all I got.
Amber, would you be willing to, in terms of your edits, state which, where they're incorrect and what you would like to see them replaced as?
Yes, I can do that. Am I gonna skip over the money piece?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll just have that conversation right after.
Okay, so section or paragraph 1. The first change is to the second sentence. Should be, it'd make me do math here, right? Should be with 4 subsequent annual donations, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And in the same sentence, should be the last, should be changing, including July 15th, 2028, should be including July 15th or June 15th, 2027. If these aren't clear, just let me know. And then section 2 would be deletion in its entirety. Paragraph 2. And paragraph 9, deleting the reference in the notice section, attention unified manager's office, and replacing with city manager. I also had toyed around it with adding a carbon copy to the city council too. So if there's any, sorry, I didn't mention that first time around. If there's any notices that CVE sends to the city manager, that they should also be coming to the city council. Does that work? Okay.
Sorry, I just realized I was muted. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Raj. George or Dan, did you have any other proposed changes?
I don't have any proposed changes, Andrew. Just out of courtesy, I would want to check to see if CVE. I can't imagine that you care how we use the money, but maybe you do. No?
Fun?
Yeah, please. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. Tim Shea, Executive Director of the Champlain Valley Exposition. Thanks for putting time for this on your agenda. And no, what you folks do with the funds is entirely up to
Spend any way we
council.
want.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So I would finish my comments by saying I see the $15,000 and with the 2% increases is fine. I'm fine with that. I see it as just a portion of all the other things that CVE does for our community. And I'm not going to try to get into them here. I think we've had a very good working relationship with them. So I'm generally very supportive of this contract.
Thank you, George. Tim, it would be great. Do you have any questions, concerns about the proposed edits or changes that you've heard, including the 15,000, as well as any of the other changes that Amber had mentioned?
No, we support all those. And in my mind too, I should have caught that myself too in seeing the draft. We'd pick up where we left off as far as the 15,000. I think we had 2 adjustments of the CPI since we originally did this. In my head, we'd start it. It's like 15.5 or 15.6, whatever that number is. We'd start there, and this agreement would pick up where that left off.
That's helpful, Tim. Just doing some quick math. So yeah, that would put it at 15,606 with the 2 adjustments, and that's something that you're amenable to. You're okay with that? It's a part of your understanding.
Very much so. Yes, thank you.
Appreciate that, Tim. So then, with those proposed changes, so that would be in section 1, changing the 15,000 to 15,606. And then Amber mentioned all the others, which are in the in the recording. If there's any questions, council, any questions, comments, concerns?
None for me.
So then I would entertain a motion to amend the agreement between Champlain Valley Exposition Incorporated and the City of Essex Junction as amended, or as as amended.
So do you want me to read this? I'll read the motion. I move that City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a financial agreement with the Champlain Valley Expo from January 2023 through December of 2027 with the amendments as presented by Amber and the board.
Sounds good. If there can be a second.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Yep.
So I think that motion should be through December 2028.
It's not what Amber, when you're saying because we had the
Because the payment would go through June 2027.
Yeah. I think the term on the agreement itself is in section 3 is 2027.
Yep. The conditions agreement shall remain in full force and effect until December 31st, 2027.
Yeah, sorry. So I think I was figuring this out along the way and might not have got it correct everywhere. So I think if it's 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, that's the 5 years.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I kept going back and forth on that.
No worries. We appreciate it, Regina. So we have the motion, we have the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Great. So that passed unanimously. Thank you all. Tim, I appreciate you being here, and I'm sorry that you're going to have to talk about it again at your next meeting.
Very much. Thank you.
No, thank you. All right, and now we can go into the update and the budget discussion on the One Main Street Park.
I was holding back because I thought I was maybe jumping the gun there.
Okay, so Andrew, now David Burton is here in the room. So you've got your memo with still, I think fair to say, rough cost estimate of different items that are in there. And a lot of that is specific stuff comes from land shapes, which David has worked with to try to get a sense of what the cost would be, minus the pergola, shade sales, lighting, and soil work, and then some of the project management work. So if you sort of put all of that together, we're coming in pretty high. Almost as much as 650, depending on how this kind of all shakes out. We are going to apply for a grant, a downtown grant, which it seems like it's a really great fit for that grant program. That would be about $200,000, and we'll apply for that in January. I'm not certain when we find out, but I think it's in the spring we find out about that grant. And I think we would have 2 years of construction with that grant program. So the thought is to get some feedback now from the council on what we might do about this to either bring that cost down or potentially phase it.
Thank you, Regina. I think that's a great question is, are there things that are included in here, that there could be a phase in where you have a phase 1 then a phase 2, or is this it needs to be done all at once?
So yeah, this is David. And yeah, that's there are definitely things that we could do in phases. In particular, like the pergola could be something where we could set up the footings for, and then potentially have it be purchased and constructed at a later date. And then, you know, some of the other items, whether we talk about the fencing or, you know, other things like that, I think could be, you know, kind of phased in to achieve. I think there will be some things that will need to go in at the initial construction. Things like, I mean, I would like to see all the planting going in, the trees going in, and, you know, if we do Silva cells, which is one of the drivers for the cost, and that's a sort of a subgrade way of installing trees and allowing for decreased compaction and healthier trees long term. So, you know, some of those different items would I think need to go in initially, but I think there are other items that could be phased in over time.
And do you think it would be possible to phase it in where there's about 200 or so thousand that could wait until a second year?
I think we could probably, yeah, figure that out. I think we could work that in. I think it would probably be the fence structure and the pergola, I would imagine, would, you know, just looking at the budgets and just a comment on the budgets too, they are rough. So they are based on lack of, you know, conceptual drawing. So in that process, you know, we were kind of erring on the high side because of the, you know, the lack of detail. So, but I'd rather do that now and have that conversation now than have bids come back in and then be surprised by it at that point. So, so yeah, so I do think there could be potential for figuring that out.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. And it's a general practice of plan and budget conservatively and then hope for the best. We have in our consent agenda a culvert replacement that we had estimated to cost over $1 million, and the project is coming in at about 900. So we'd much rather be in that kind of a situation than plan on 500,000 and have it come in at 700.
Yeah.
Much better conversation to have. Counselors, what questions, comments, concerns do you have?
Well, I'll start since you all know how I feel about this. I'm not at all surprised. First of all, I think that it's roughly what I thought was going to come out at. I think I would go full speed ahead on this. If it needs to be phased, then phase it. That's fine. I look at this as pure economic development. I'm going to get a little, maybe digress a little bit here and look at our grand list. Our grand list has been hovering right around 11. We have a fraction of a % growth every year. Most of that growth has come from improvements of properties in the village center or the city center and on the Pearl Street corridor. That's the horse we're riding into the future. And I see this as a major improvement and a major boost. I've been one of the old platitudes that former manager Pat Scheidel always said, you cannot expect developers and investors to invest in you if you don't invest in yourself, particularly when you're trying to renovate an little old downtown. So this is a very worthwhile investment. I think it will go well towards hopefully becoming a focal point of the community. If we look at other little cities around the state, St. Albans has the space for Great Big Park in their downtown. Winooski has their water walkway. We don't have the space. We have traffic. We have a great big traffic jam in the middle of our community. And this is one way of visually mitigating that and at the same time making a wonderful space for the people who actually live in our city center to come and to congregate. I know I could go on and on. I could probably go on for about a half an hour how much I support doing this. But really, I think it's money well spent. The last thing I'll point out, some of you, I'm not sure if Dan and Andrew, you were on the board when we renovated this building, and we wound up spending $700,000 just to renovate the outside of roughly the outside of this building. And I know that when we voted to do that, it was like a breathtaking amount of money to just to repoint and clean the bricks on the outside of a 200-year-old building. But we got nothing but compliments and praise because I think people have pride, and people who live in Essex Junction saw this building as the kind of the set piece, the cornerstone that helps define our community. And I think this park will be exactly the same thing. I think there may be a few naysayers, but I think generally speaking, even people who are just commuting through will really appreciate the effort and the statement that this makes. So I'm fully supportive of going ahead with it.
Thank you, George. Go ahead, Amber.
I'm supportive of it. My concern is the money. Just doing a back of the envelope, and I know that the memo says that we would be able to cover it between the Amtrak match and the project as presented, assuming the $200,000 in the grant. We're looking at $1.5 million, of which we don't have completely in our economic development fund. Obviously, the fund is going to continue to grow over the next couple of years. But generally speaking, I wouldn't want to take all of the money out of that fund. I would like to leave some so that we have some in reserves. And so I am concerned about the money piece. And as long as, finance can tell us that we would be okay with having both of these projects on our, having the Amtrak match and having this project as presented, and some money still left in the economic development fund, then I would be totally on board with let's go forward without phasing. If there's some concerns about the money piece, then I think phasing makes sense. I would just say that when we decide what we're going to phase, just be mindful of the grant and any particular requirements, if there are any, that would preclude us from getting that based on the phasing.
Thank you, Amber. Go ahead, Raj.
Yes, the only thing I'll add to this, or the only question I have is timeline. I'd like to have our second conversation around the budget before I commit to this at this level. I support the park. I think we can do it. I think it's going to be vital. As George said, agree with everything. There's a lot of moving parts. I just kind of want to have a better understanding of where we're at before we, for instance, make a decision to just go for it or to phase it. So I'm generally in agreement with it. I just want to make sure I have a really clear picture for myself as to how everything else is going to come together. But judging from the fact that it's almost definitely coming from the Economic Development Fund, as Amber said, if we can be assured that we're in good shape, then I'm behind it. Does that make any sense?
It made sense.
Does it? No, I don't think it did, but I tried.
It made sense, Raj. You made sense.
That's the important thing. I see Regina nodding her head.
Regina's laughing, so that's great.
Makes sense to me, for sure.
Great.
Our plan is to talk about the budget again, your first meeting in January.
Can I make just one? Can I just throw one thing in here? I noticed that city engineer Rick Hamlin is present. And Rick, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm here to support the project as a part of the design team. And I think the concept, if the park does need to be phased, has many components that would readily lend themselves to phasing in a way that was efficient. So I think if phasing is desired, there are, I think, a couple different ways of addressing that and bringing the elements in a piece at a time, like I say, in an efficient way. So I agree with that concept, and I'm here to answer any other questions that you may have.
I guess my question is, if you could send me that picture so we can just have that as the background, that would be.
Yes, I'm coming to you live from the future.
Rick, I think we'd all like that photo if you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right from the preliminary plans that David has put together. It's just one of the detail sheets off the plan.
No, it's fantastic. Really appreciate that, Richard. Rick. One of the things that I think that it's pretty clear is we all want this park to be done. We want it to be done as soon as possible. It's taken a long time to get here, and so let's not delay it any longer than necessary. So I think the general consensus from our board is yes, let's move along. Let's get this built. We do just want to make sure that we have enough funds to take care of Amtrak's, the Amtrak station, and the other needs that we've talked about. So having that conversation at our next meeting, I think will be beneficial. And I hope that is enough clarity for those of you who, Regina, David, and Rick.
Could I say one thing? Yeah, I guess the one thing that I would just put out there from a timeline standpoint is we had talked about kind of ideal timing for when to go to bid for a project like this, and February would be ideal if we could have our ducks in a row to be able to do that. That's kind of prime time where we'll get a lot of good attention and interest. So in a perfect situation, we would kind of have the feedback and have sort of the green light to move forward sooner the better, so that we can spend the time that we would need to getting the detailing done, so that we can have a bid set for February.
So if at our January 11th meeting, if we make that decision about whether we get the grant, then this would how we'd like to see this move forward. And if we don't get the grant, then this is how we'd like to see that move forward. Would that work for that timeline?
Rick, what would you think about that?
I think if we knew by mid-January which direction things were going, and there's nothing hard and fast about February. If we went out to bid in the first or second week in March, we're still in a pretty good time period. What we want to avoid is May, June, when contractors already their dance cards are full. So if we knew by mid-January, I think that would work.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, it would be great to be able to look at the things that we've discussed for using the Economic Development Fund for, and the impact of either 600,000 or 800,000, or I'm sorry, 600 or 400,000, and what the impact would be on that budget would be appreciated.
Yep.
Great. Do either of you have any other questions for us?
No.
Okay. Then I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for coming out, sticking around this long. Really do appreciate it.
Welcome.
Just gonna head back into the park here and hang out for a while.
Yeah, if you find that flux capacitor that allows you to do that, please share.
Yeah, sounds good.
I know,
And
it's so warm there.
Speaking of going into the future and technology, I believe we next have a website tutorial. I think Ashley
here for us. I think I made you co-host, so you should be able to share.
Okay, let's go ahead and share the screen then.
All right, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. So if any of you have been on our City of Essex Junction website, you will notice there has been some differences. On November 30th, we launched the redesigned website, and I'm pleased tonight to give you an overview of the new homepage and showcase some of the new meeting features. So let's go ahead and get started with the homepage. As you can see, it has an entirely new look with brighter colors and some new features such as larger and higher contrast fonts, which will improve readability and accessibility. One of the new features is the quick answers button, which is in the right-hand corner over here. When you click on it, it will take you to some of the more frequently asked questions in the city. And this list of questions will continue to be updated throughout the year. As you can see, we have our utility bill question, and the winter parking ban has been recently added to the list of questions. Some of these will stay on for the remaining of the year, and others will come off as different things arise throughout the city. I'm going to go back to the homepage. Our main navigation, which is this up at the top, it has changed some with some rearranging of where some of the pages are located, but for the most part, it has stayed the same. Underneath the main photo, you will see 4 main buttons. These main buttons are our community resources, doing business in Essex Junction, the Recreation and Park website, and the Brownell Library website. The next section is our news section, which is similar to what we had on the previous website, but it now has a cleaner look and feel to it. Under that is one of our newer sections, which is our meeting information. On the left-hand side, you will see all the most recent City Council minutes. It's also take you to the City Council's page. On the right, it has all the upcoming meetings of all the boards, commissions, committees, and you can go to the full meeting calendar there as well. We will take a look at this in a little bit more detail as I get farther along in the presentation. In the next section, you will find our community-wide events, which are events at city locations for the committee to know about and attend. And then finally, you have our footer information, which has all of our contact information, links to our SeeClickFix, our Facebook page, and then links to some of the main navigation. So let's take a look at this meeting section, because this is one of the newer features that was one of the main reasons why we needed to redesign our website. The current calendar that we had on the old website was no longer going to be compatible any longer. We couldn't make any more updates to it. So this was EcoPixel's revised revision to the new meeting section. So let's take a look at our city council, which is the meeting that we're having right now. When you click on one of the meetings, it does take you to the meeting page where you'll see the date and time of the meeting. When the agenda has been posted, it will be under agenda. You'll have the printable packet that we had on the previous website, but then it lists the agenda out in a web view, which is great for people who are using a screen reader and for accessibility. Once the meeting minutes have been posted, they will be listed on this page as well. And then lastly, you can go to the next meeting or a previous meeting to look at those meetings. Just so that you guys can see what that meeting section or the minutes look like once they're posted, we can go to our planning commission. They've had one of the most recent meetings. On all of the pages, you will have, for all the committees and boards, you'll have a brief description about the board or committee, their members, information about their meetings, and then their upcoming meetings that they have coming up. And then under that is meeting and document archive. This will be where all of the minutes and previous meetings will be able to be found. So when you click on that, you'll see the most recent meetings and any upcoming meetings. And this was their last meeting. And you can see the minutes with the draft version because those haven't been approved. Once those are approved, it'll say approved on there. And then you can still go back and see their agenda and any packet. So it's all right in one central location instead of it kind of being in multiple places that you would have to click in the previous website. The last update that I'm going to show you guys is the EJRP website. They also got a redesigned look. It has been updated to look similar to the branding of the city website, but they now have their own website. In the past, when you clicked on their website, the city navigation was at the top and then the city information was at the bottom of the page, which is confusing for a lot of people, especially when they're trying to contact EJRP. They called the main office a lot. So hopefully now this will be a lot easier for people to find their information strictly to them and their contact information at the bottom of the page. Okay, that was a very brief and fast overview of the website. So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you guys and get your feedback on it.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Really appreciate the work that you've helped to lead through this, and appreciate EcoPixel for their technical side of being able to have this all happen. I don't have any questions, just appreciation for the update, and in particular appreciate the accessibility enhancements as in previous work worlds. It's met with many people who need and rely upon those type of features, so greatly appreciate that. City councilors, any questions?
I think it's terrific. I've said that already. One thing I think is even most especially terrific is how the city council gets its own great big box with all of our stuff in it right on the front page. I really like that part. Can I make one small, really nitpicky editorial comment though?
Totally. We are always looking for improvements on our website. It's always ongoing.
It's an interesting grammatical point. So, and nearly 11,000 residents at the heart of Chittenden County, should that be in the heart of Chittenden County?
That would be debatable.
The heart is more figurative. The heart of the matter, you know, but we are literally right in the middle. So I think it's in the heart. I would go for that, but I'm willing to stay with that.
Thank you for that feedback.
All right.
I'm okay with people thinking that Essex Junction is the heart of Chittenden County. I mean, at the heart of Chittenden County is us.
A lot of ways to go.
So heart and soul.
Well done. Any other questions, comments?
No, I did some searching around and it worked much better. And it's just cleaner, it's more accessible. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, I don't think there's anything else. So Ashley, we really appreciate you sticking around, and again, appreciate your time and dedication to updating the website.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
And now we have our conversation with Recreation Parks Director Brad.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for joining us.
Sure, no problem. I was just going to run through some stuff real quick and then just open it up for questions if that works for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Great. I mean, I know you all are familiar with EJRP and our Parks and Recreation system here in the city, but I thought I'd just run through some of the things we do. You know, we just a few months ago wrapped up summer. We offer summer day camps. We have about 400 kids in care every day from 7:30 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. We run camps for 9 or 10 weeks of the summer this year, which is pretty unique. Most communities, most of the things I talk about are different in other communities. Either they start those camps later, they end them earlier in the day, or they end them earlier in the summer. It's very rare if you look around at some of the other folks who are providing similar services to us that you'd find that they're doing all of those things, starting at 7:30, ending at 6 o'clock, going for 9 or 10 weeks. And then you always look at the price. Our summer day camp last summer was $190 a week. The other camps around us, $240 a week, $275 a week. So we're, you know, constantly trying to provide the best care as well as the least expensive care that we can provide, while also, you know, competing with a very significant increase in wages over the past couple of years, and also trying to find staff. And so certainly the demand for care has not changed. You know, we saw a little bit of change, I think, post-COVID, when, you know, families were working at home more and had more flexible work schedules. But overall, our numbers just are not down. We have kids on the wait list that we can't get in, mostly due to staffing issues and not being able to provide that full slate of staff every day. Swim lessons at the Maple Street Pool are obviously a huge, important part of the summer. People come I think over and over, I'll try not to say regionally, but we are a regional attraction for outdoor pools. Most communities don't have an outdoor pool. We're fortunate enough that we do. We've had one since the 70s, upgraded at the end of the 90s. And the pool is actually in pretty great shape. There's a few things that need to be updated. It is 20 years old, but it's really in good shape. Our specialty camps, things like tennis, basketball, baseball, football, art, we do lots of different art camps, are all extremely well received. We just found a couple of summers ago that, coming out of COVID, people were just really hungry to get back into the swing of things and be with people and learn and grow. And that hunger really hasn't stopped. So the community seems to be really yearning for those kinds of programs and opportunities. And that's great, because the more we get, people interested, the more programs we're able to offer and fill, and the more fulfilling they are. So we've been really fortunate and happy to see that happening. Sometimes we forget that we do community gardens, and we have community gardens at West Street and at Meadow Terrace. They are always full with a wait list. We did expand those a couple of years ago, and so that just continues to be an important avenue. Again, thinking about, as I go through this list of things, not all communities have an outdoor pool, not all communities provide daycare, not all communities have a preschool or community garden. So we start to keep adding to that list of things that we do have here in the city, and so I think we're really fortunate. We have a preschool, a 3-4 and a 4-5 classroom. We serve 34 families there each day. At the Rec Kids After School program, we serve all of EWSD, so that includes the town in Westford. We have 375 kids a day in care from dismissal until 6 p.m. for 179 school days. We offer vacation camps on 20 of the days that there are no school. Again, if you look around at surrounding communities, there are vacation camps here and there. There might be 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 days that get covered. We cover 20. To send your kid to Rec Kids After School Care for 5 days a week is $81.25 this year. If you look at the surrounding areas, if you live in any community that's touching us or near, it's $95, $93, or $96 a week. So again, we're fortunate that we're able to work those numbers and keep them down, the cost down for families. Community events, regional comes up again. We've talked about this recently. July 4th, moving to CVE because it was such a large event, and I'm glad our partners from CVE were there tonight. They are extremely helpful and were throughout COVID in finding us programming space, and also now July 4th seems like it's going to be an annual event there with 6,000 plus people. We saw Junction Jam back this year, Construction Junction, the Pumpkin Palooza, over 3,000 attendees recently. The return of the train hop was a great success. If anybody was able to make it out last week, I know my kids were out and I was out with them, and it was a lot of fun. And it was nice to see just a lot of people, and a lot of people in businesses that they may not normally be. We had great feedback from Nomad that he was seeing lots of people going to get their train stamps that were saying they've never been in there and had that experience. I was in Reclaimed on Railroad, and I was in Vermont Chalky Paint, 2 places I've not been. So it was a good experience, I think, and hopefully, our local businesses were happy with it as well. Winter lights in the park, I'm looking at them now. We're working on getting some people counters to really quantify this over the course of the month. I can't tell you, we're definitely over 10,000. I just don't know by how many. If you drive by here any time of the night, from Thanksgiving until New Year's, the parking lot's packed, and it's not because we have a ton of programs going on in the back or because there's people, out on the football field. It's because they're walking through the park. And so I think it's just, if you read the Free Press this week, there was a article about regional attractions in New England, and Maple Street Park lights were on that list. So a pretty unique and cool thing that's happening here. We're also doing letters to the North Pole, where kids can drop off letters here, and we have a giving tree where we work with Essex pediatrics and social workers from our local schools to provide gifts for families in need, and that's supported through donations from our community. Fall, our running series programs have really gone off well. We would do one in the fall and the spring. We do a variety of runs, the Halloween Hustle, most recently. Youth basketball is a huge program that we're operating right now with 200 plus participants in all of the gyms throughout the district. Adult basketball is actually really big for us as well. And we'll be taking 2 buses again of 8th graders to DC in April, a trip that we thoroughly enjoy. You know, I think you all recognize, you know, all of these things are contributing to offering people recreational and educational opportunities, exposing them to new things. But really, when you start to look at, you know, some data from NRPA and such, it's speaking to the quality of life in a community. And you know, the value of homes that are closer to public parks is higher by the sheer fact that people desire to be near public parks and access those amenities. So just as we have good schools in our community and so many other things that we have a strong library and a great, you know, public works department, I think Parks and Recreation also greatly contributes to the quality of life here. You know, some of the feedback, we often do survey feedback, some summer camp feedback, you know, about a girl participating. She's having the time of her life. Seriously, I've never seen this kid so happy. Maddie, a counselor, has been a blessing for my son to see every day. The change in my daughter after summer camp last summer was astounding. She was much more independent and willing to try new things. That's feedback from 3 different people. The winter lights, you know, it's so beautiful. Thank you for brightening up our community. So people are recognizing not just the value in what we're offering, but seeing that we are creating community through people, parks, and programs, that we're making a difference. And it's not just, you know, signing kids up for things, but actually connecting and adults as well, giving them opportunities. In terms of looking ahead, we recently had budget day, so I won't bore you all with the budget, but just as a reminder, we have a $1.4 million general fund budget and a $3.2 million program fund budget. The program fund is an enterprise fund. It's funded completely by program fees and pays for the program expenses from those fees. And we're the inverse from what the industry standard should be. So, you know, we have 31% general fund money and 69% program fund. Industry standard is that 60% of our money should be coming from the general fund. So again, we are extremely conscientious about our programs and quality of programs, and also keep an eye on the dollar to try and make all those things work. We are currently trying to look at some designs to expand the Aspire building. We've been very fortunate in receiving over $1 million in childcare grants from COVID that helped cover staffing during COVID times, which means some of that money that was budgeted we were able to keep aside. And we really need some additional space here. We're almost to a place where we're going to be able to offer all of our vacation camps here at the park or at just one school instead of throughout the schools. And I think everybody's happy about that. Both we're happy in schools to let those schools have a break. So space is a premium for us. That's our hardest thing, is indoor space. And in Vermont, that's pretty important. Even in the summertime, you know, to run a full day summer camp, you can't just stick kids in pavilions and tents. In the event you have thunder and lightning, you need quality cover. So we're constantly looking for more indoor quality space. We will see in this budget that's coming forward some price increases next year for some of our, in particular, our licensed childcare programs, preschool, after school, summer day camps. You know, we had to increase our wages by 11% just this fall, you know, just to try and get people to work. We were starting at $14 an hour. We had to bump that to $15.50 to be competitive in the marketplace. And that's still just barely competitive. You can work at most gas stations or McDonald's for 18 to 20. So we're needing to increase our fees to offset some of those increases in pay. Lastly, just big picture, big ticket items up for conversation, hopefully in the near future. Gym space is really important to us. We need to kind of do an assessment of the courts that we have in this community and the courts that we want to have. And when I say courts, I mean outdoor tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts. The average lifespan of most of those courts is about 25 years. I cannot tell you the last time that, and when I say lifespan, I'm not talking about top coating. I'm talking about ripping up all of the blacktop and replacing with new blacktop. is 25 years. And certainly I cannot remember in the last 25 years that we've torn up completely any of our courts. We just kind of keep resurfacing them, and that's not working. If you came and saw some of our courts, that's not a good solution. So that's a really significant expense to several $100,000 just to have those courts. Our skate park has been around for quite a long time, and at some point it needs to be addressed as to what our community wants to do in terms of offering that amenity. And then lastly, we need to offer year-round outdoor bathrooms at Maple Street and Cascade, or at least Cascade seasonal ones. There are no permanent bathrooms at Cascade Park, and it's been a very busy pickleball haven for the last few years, although those are part of the court system that needs to be addressed. With this hopeful addition to Aspire, we are going to try to get some outdoor year-round bathrooms for Maple Street. The ones we have in the pool house are just seasonal, so we're not able to keep those open in the winter months. That was quick and a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer questions and take comments.
Thank you, Brad. It's always nice to hear about the amazing ways that EJRP is helping to create the community that we do love so much. You mentioned briefly about the Giving Tree. To those who might be listening, either live or later, can you just talk a little bit more about the Giving Tree and how people can learn more?
Yeah, so thanks. If you visit our website, our new website, you will be able to find Giving Tree on here. If I click on the right places, it's under events, and it's the Giving Tree, and there's a link to donate, and it's an opportunity to purchase some items through us. And so, you know, sometimes a traditional Giving Tree, at least what I remember, is that you would pick it off the tree and go buy those items and bring them in. This one, you get to buy online the items, and we actually go then and make the purchases, wrap the gifts through volunteer helpers from the high school, and then deliver them to Essex pediatrics and social workers at schools who get them to families. So it's a different opportunity to help families in need. And so it's a real easy one to click and offer up some support.
Thank you, Brad. And then the last one, you mentioned hiring troubles with childcare. Is that still an issue, having a hard time finding people for childcare?
You know, knock on wood, we are only short one full-time position out of 9 full-time positions that we have in after-school childcare and summer day camps. It's the part-time folks that are difficult to find. Again, you know, wages is one thing. Childcare licensing standards is another. High schoolers do not qualify, unless you're 18, you don't qualify as somebody who can be alone with kids. And so we have some really competent, wonderful, kind, caring 16 and 17-year-olds who I would happily trust with all 3 of my children who cannot be alone with children here in our program. So licensing standards catch us up a few times. Actually, I just learned I was working at one of the after-school sites after the first snow, and learned that due to after-school licensing standards, after-school programs are not allowed to use the playgrounds when there's snow on the ground. But the kids use the playground all day during the school day. So it's just another example of some folks, you know, the intention there is that the wood chips, which are the safe fall protection, are then covered in snow and ice and don't offer the same protection. So, but I digress. Your question was about staff, and it's really about part-time staff at this point, and retention of full-time staff is what we're really focused on. We're really trying to make sure that we're engaging our full-time staff and making sure that they're finding meaning in this work for more than, you know, just a year or two, and really see this as a potential career long-term.
And it also sounds like there may be a desire to try and do something legislatively around some of these requirements for after-school care programs, because that does not sound at all logical.
Yeah, well, I've been talking to the child care team about how we can have some influence in that. We're an influencer, in particular, Maureen is pretty involved in statewide after-school stuff. but I've been having the same conversations that we have a lot of feedback on the existing regulations. You know, I'll just give you one other example, staffing wise. We've really been trying to get teachers from the school or paraeducators to try and stay after school, even just for 45 minutes, and help us out, get us started till we can get some high school and college kids there. And we've had some success doing that, but there are all sorts of licensing standards that you need to attend 10 hours a year of educational components, and you have to get specific fingerprints and background checks and all sorts of other things when these people are already working in our school buildings all day. A lot of them, you know, at some point, if there was an audit during the year, they wouldn't meet all of the criteria to actually serve as staff when they're actually teaching kids during the day. So there's certainly some work to be done there.
So you can be a paraeducator in one of our schools, but you can't take care of those same kids after school.
You got it.
That does not sound logical. Well, that's enough for me. Counselors, any other questions, comments for Brad?
I'm good.
No, Brad, just the childcare piece was huge. I mean, I know I hear all the time it's a decision point for why people come here as opposed to other communities. So yeah, just great work all around. Very much appreciated.
Yep, I agree with Raj's comments totally. And again, to go back to economic development, to the fact that both parents can work and know that their kids are in some quality programs after school, I think it's great. It's great. It's a great service we provide. Appreciate it.
The only comment I would make that's just sort of a comment question is, I wonder how over time other sports that require indoor space that haven't been traditionally represented can sort of break in. And I think some of us have been receiving email and phone calls and drive-bys at the grocery store by pickleballers and other athletes. So I just don't. I've heard a little bit about how difficult gym space is, and I want to stay away from that as far as I can personally. But I don't know if you have any typical Brad solutions to how to create more space from nothing, or how to reshuffle the deck so other groups can get some opportunities at the finite gym space in the colder months. I don't know how that's done. I'm just throwing that out there. But realizing that everything is finite.
Yeah, and we've been having the conversation here, Raj, and it's I think the hardest thing we all know about winter is everybody wants indoor space and wants gym space, and they all want it at the same time. And so, you know, and we're providing after school care in our gymnasiums until 6 p.m. So the first practices or the first opportunities start at 6:15 p.m. And it's tricky, you know, when are you going to put first and second grade practice, you know, not at 8 p.m. And so it's tricky. It's a very big puzzle piece that we do with basketball alone. And I agree with you, you know, more opportunities are necessary. It's simply a supply and demand of physical space. So I you know, the long-term solution is we need more physical space. Of course, when we do that, you'll have the same challenges. But we have an ear out for it. And we've been kind of, you know, things settle in a little bit come January for basketball and all of those things. And so we're trying to keep an eye if we can free up some opportunities.
Great.
Well, Brad, thank you again. Really appreciate it. I don't think there's other questions from the council, so appreciate you sticking with us this late.
Yeah, no problem. And you know, I'm obviously the one sharing the news. I'm not the one who does all this stuff. I don't mow the lawns. I don't provide after school care. I don't teach swim lessons. I have an amazing staff of 23 full-time people who manage and oversee and supervise all of those things. We have 250 part-time and seasonal people who actually are boots on the ground providing those services. So I'm happy to share it all, and I didn't create it all. It's just sharing with you all the wonderful things that the folks in our community are doing.
Well, thank you. And as always, please do pass the appreciation on to the staff of EJRP as well.
Will do. Thanks.
Thank you. And we are now at the discussion and consideration of Green Mountain Transit and the Winooski Valley Parks District representatives and the Communications Union District.
Yeah, so you've got a memo in your packet for all three of these positions. Let me go back to the packet. So we are now members of GMT, now members of Winooski Valley Park District, and there is now a new Chittenden County Communications Union District. So each of those require a representative. Thought we would have this conversation here tonight with the council and see where you folks would like to go with it. Either add more hours to your volunteer service, or look for some community members for these positions. And the only caveat is for the Communications Union District. I am happy to play that role just at the beginning of it, just to get the actual governance structure up and running, because that has to happen within 90 days of the vote. And then hopefully could find somebody else to step in there.
So maybe for that one, come back to us when you're ready to move off of that, or we could even start advertising early and just have it be known that that position could wait until 90 days after, or whenever your time frame is ready.
Yep, that sounds good.
For Green Mountain Transit, I'll go ahead and say that personally I'm interested. It's one that Green Mountain Transit is very critical to our community. It's something that is critical to our broader community. Also, given just budgetarily the amount that the requests are, and the something that personally would love to help be a part of. So I'm happy to continue to volunteer some time and be a part of that. At the same time, if anybody else is interested, I understand that there can be an alternate, and so I'd be happy to play that role if somebody else is also interested. And I see Dan jumping up to be that. Okay, so I'd be happy to take on that role.
I'd alternate that for you.
All right. Winooski Valley Park District.
I'll be happy to take, unless someone else wants to do it, I'm happy to take that on. I wasn't the GMT driving into Burlington on every other Tuesday or every third Tuesday versus a Zoom meeting. I'm going to go with the Zoom meeting.
Mr. Practical.
But if someone else really wants to be on the Winooski Valley Park District Board, I'm happy to be the alternative if that works for you. I don't know. Good.
I'm good with you.
Okay.
George. I appreciate you
be right
stepping up.
there.
I'll be your backup.
Okay.
Would you, Dan?
I would. I'll do
All right. Regina, does the Chittenden County Communications Union District, does that need an alternate?
That's a good question. We don't have any bylaws yet, so we don't have any clear direction at the moment. If somebody wants to be a backup, I'll take it.
See a lady right on that board smiling, looking like she really wants to get involved.
I think her cat just raised her hand.
Well, see, the problem I have with this one is there's a couple of things. Obviously, I have an extensive telecommunications background, but I also represent a communications union district. And so I'm kind of teetering on, it might be a conflict of interest for me to do this.
Sounds good. All right. So then we would have for appointments that I would be for the Green Mountain Transit with Raj as an alternate, for Winooski Valley Parks District. Trustees, George would be the appointee with Dan as an alternate, and Regina for the Chittenden County Communications Union District. If somebody wanted to make such a motion.
Sure. I will move that we appoint Andrew Brown to the Green Mountain Transit Board of Commissioners with, who is the backup? With Raj Chawla, Councilor Raj Chawla as the backup. And I will move that we appoint George Tyler, myself, to the Winooski Valley Park District Board of Trustees with Councilor Dan Karen as the backup. And I will move that we appoint City Manager Regina Mahoney to the Chittenden County Communications Union District, be our representative to the Chittenden County Communications District.
Second.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Dan. Is there any further discussion? Well, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
I only want to ask one question. Can was it appropriate for me to to make the motion that appoints me to a board with someone else? I mean, is someone?
Yes.
Was it appropriate? Was that okay? I mean,
yes.
6 months from now, we're not going to find ourselves in a civil suit. Okay, good. All right.
Your punishment, George, will have to drive into Burlington for the with Andrew.
With coffee in hand.
Yes.
It made me think of a cartoon. I won't go there.
Yeah, don't go there.
Yeah, anyway, so going on to the next agenda item. Thank you all. We have a bunch of executive session stuff. Tree farm, cannabis control, land use violation, and conversation with Regina. So we'll move past those and do that all at once at the end. And we are on to the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Dan. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. Passed unanimously. Thank you. And on to the reading file. And are there any comments? All right. Seeing no comments. Let's go into the fun of the executive session motions. I will go ahead and move. I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding contracts associated with the tree farm recreation facility would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage because the council risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if it discusses the contract terms in public. And I would further move that we go into executive session to discuss contracts under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes, and to negotiate or secure real estate purchase or lease options under Title I, Section 313A2 of Vermont statutes, and include Regina Mahoney, Brad Luck, and Harlan Smith.
I'll second.
Thank you, George. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Great, passed unanimously. Thank you. I would then move that the city council make specific finding that general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communications would place the city at a substantial disadvantage. I would further move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications pursuant to 1 VSA, Section 313A1F, to include the city council and city manager.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Passed unanimously. Thank you all. Round 3, I move that the city council make specific finding that general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communications would place the city at a substantial disadvantage. And I would move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications pursuant to 1 VSA, Section 313A1F, to include the city council and city manager.
Second.
Beat me.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Great, so that passed unanimously. And last but not least, I move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss a personnel evaluation pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A3 to include the city council and city manager.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Passed unanimously again. All right. Let's take a 10, 5, 10, 5-minute break. Let's take a 5-minute break.
All right.
And then we'll see you all in the executive session land. We would not be coming back with any decisions tonight. So to all of you,